The sound of gunfire cracked through the cold Texas air as Dr. Samuel Walker ducked behind his overturned wagon, clutching his medical bag to his chest. Blood streamed from a gash on his forehead, blurring his vision as he desperately tried to control his breathing. Behind him, the settlement of Riverdale Junction burned, black smoke billowing into the twilight sky. The attack had come without warning, not from the local tribes as the townspeople had feared, but from Jebediah Blackwood and his band of bounty hunters who'd been hired to clear the land for the coming railroad. Sam had been the only one to stand against them when they'd started shooting, and now he was their prime target. "Come on out, Doc," Blackwood's gravelly voice called through the smoke. "Ain't nowhere to run. This whole territory's gonna be railroad property by spring. No sense in you dying for it." Sam checked the small revolver in his pocket. 2 bullets left. Not nearly enough to fend off Blackwood's men. He'd have to make a run for it. As the bounty hunters closed in from the east, Sam made his decision, shoving his most essential instruments into his satchel and abandoning the wagon that had been his mobile clinic for the past 3 years. With the last light fading, he sprinted toward the edge of town, bullets kicking up dirt at his heels. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Part 1. The chill of the autumn night cut through Sam's thin coat as he pushed deeper into the wilderness of whispering pines. His breath came in ragged clouds, each inhale burning his smoke-damaged lungs. The sounds of pursuit had faded hours ago, but Sam didn't dare stop. Blackwood was known for his tracking skills, a reputation earned during the Civil War and honed in the decade since. 3 years of building a life in Riverdale Junction, gone in a single night. Sam had come west after the war with nothing but his medical training and the nightmares that haunted his sleep. The frontier had offered something Boston couldn't, a chance to heal others while healing himself. Now he was once again a man without a home, fleeing into territory that few white men had mapped. The moon rose over the Eagle Claw Mountains, casting just enough light for Sam to avoid breaking an ankle on the uneven ground. He followed the Serpentine River upstream, knowing that water would be his most precious resource. The wilderness stretched endlessly before him, indifferent to his plight. "Focus, Sam," he muttered to himself, the habit of self-talk a remnant from long nights in battlefield hospitals. One step at a time, find shelter, build a fire, treat that head wound. As a Harvard-educated doctor, Sam understood the dangers of exposure and infection all too well. The gash on his forehead had mostly clotted, but without proper cleaning, fever would follow. His medical bag contained iodine and bandages, but his supplies were limited. Everything else, his surgical tools, medicines, research journals, had been left behind in the burning wagon. By midnight, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. The adrenaline that had carried him through the attack was waning, replaced by bone-deep weariness and pain. Just as Sam's steps began to falter, the trees opened to reveal a small clearing beside the river. A natural overhang in the rock face offered some shelter from the wind. It would have to do. Sam worked methodically, gathering what dry wood he could find and using his flint to spark a small fire. The flames cast dancing shadows across the rock as he cleaned his wound, hissing through clenched teeth as the iodine burned. With practiced fingers, he stitched the gash closed, using the small mirror from his kit to guide the needle. Each stitch was a battle against his exhaustion and the tremor in his left hand, a permanent reminder of a Confederate shell that had exploded too close during the Battle of Antietam. The fire provided little comfort against the deepening cold. Autumn was giving way to winter earlier than usual this year, according to the farmers who'd visited his clinic. Sam huddled closer to the flames, wrapping himself in the thin blanket. From his satchel, sleep came in restless bursts, disturbed by every crack of a branch or howl in the distance. Dawn broke with a crystalline clarity, sunlight spearing through the pines and glittering on frost-covered ground. Sam woke stiff and shivering, his breath a white cloud in the morning air. The fire had died to embers overnight. His head throbbed, but when he checked the wound in his mirror, the edges showed no signs of infection. Small mercies. He forced himself to eat a few pieces of jerky from his meager provisions before continuing upstream. The terrain grew increasingly rugged as the river led him into the foothills of the Eagle Claw Mountains. By midday, the relatively flat riverside trail had given way to a steeper path that forced Sam to scramble over boulders and through dense underbrush. It was near dusk on his second day in the wilderness when he heard it, a deep guttural groan carried on the wind. Sam froze, listening intently. It came again, distinctly human and filled with pain. Against every instinct for self-preservation, Sam moved toward the sound. In a small ravine, partially hidden by a fallen pine, lay a man. But not just any man. Even in the fading light, Sam could see the distinctive clothing and long black hair of a Comanche warrior. Blood soaked the warrior's side, where an arrow protruded at an awkward angle, its shaft broken off a few inches from the skin. The man's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow and irregular. Sam hesitated. Relations between settlers and the Comanche had been strained for years, with violent raids and retribution flowing in both directions. The army at Fort Laramie had standing orders to pacify any Comanche bands they encountered. Most settlers viewed them with a mixture of fear and hatred. But Sam had taken an oath in medical school to treat all who suffered, regardless of race, creed, or circumstance. The war had tested that oath countless times as he'd moved between tending Union and Confederate wounded. This was no different. "I'm going to help you," Sam said clearly, approaching slowly with his empty hands visible. He knew the man might not understand English, but his tone and gestures could convey his intentions. The warrior's eyes snapped open, dark, intelligent, and filled with pain. His right hand moved with surprising speed toward a knife at his belt, but the motion caused him to grimace in agony. Sam remained still, keeping his hands where the man could see them. "Doctor," Sam said, pointing to himself. "Medicine man. I can help with the arrow." For a long moment, the warrior studied him, his face a mask of suspicion and pain. Then, with a slight nod, he removed his hand from the knife. Sam approached carefully, kneeling beside the injured man to examine the wound. The arrow had entered just below the ribs on the right side, missing vital organs, but deeply embedded in muscle. The broken shaft made extraction challenging, and the wound showed early signs of infection, the skin hot and swollen around the entry point. Most concerning was the arrowhead itself, which appeared to be coated with a dark substance. Poison. "This will hurt," Sam warned, meeting the warrior's gaze directly. "But leaving it will kill you." The Comanche understood enough to brace himself, gripping a nearby root with white-knuckled intensity. Sam opened his medical bag, laying out his forceps, scalpel, iodine, and bandages. He offered the man a strip of leather to bite down on, which was accepted with another terse nod. Sam worked with the focus that had earned him recognition during the war. First, he cut away the clothing around the wound, then cleaned the area as best he could with water from his canteen. The arrowhead had barbs that would tear flesh if pulled directly out. It would need to be pushed through completely, an excruciating process, but necessary. "Hold still," Sam instructed, gripping the broken shaft firmly. With steady pressure, he pushed the arrow deeper, guiding it through muscle until the metal tip tented the skin on the other side of the warrior's torso. The Comanche remained silent, his only response the rhythmic clenching of his jaw and the sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold air. Using his scalpel, Sam made a small incision over the protruding tip, then carefully extracted the entire arrowhead through the new opening. Blood flowed freely now, which was both dangerous and beneficial. It would help flush the poison from the system. Sam immediately applied pressure with clean bandages, stemming the bleeding while checking the removed arrowhead. The poison was unfamiliar to him, a thick, resinous substance with a pungent odor. Not the usual snake venom or plant toxins he'd encountered before. The warrior seemed to recognize it, however, his eyes narrowing at the sight. "Snake tree," he said unexpectedly in broken English, his voice deep and strained. 3 days' death. Sam's stomach tightened. A slow-acting poison that gave the victim days of suffering before an inevitable death. He'd heard rumors of such toxins used in tribal warfare, but had never treated a case. His knowledge of toxicology, while advanced, for a frontier doctor might not be sufficient. "I need to make a poultice," Sam said, thinking quickly. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "Draw out the poison. Do you know what stops Snake Tree?" The warrior studied him for another long moment, seemingly assessing Sam's trustworthiness. Then he gestured weakly toward a small leather pouch at his belt. Inside, Sam found an assortment of dried herbs and roots unfamiliar to his European medical training. "White flower," the warrior said, pointing to a crushed white petal. "River clay, fire." Sam worked quickly, following the warrior's occasional one-word instructions. He gathered clay from the riverbank, mixed it with the crushed herbs, and heated the mixture over a small fire. The resulting poultice gave off a sharp, medicinal scent that made his eyes water. He applied it to both the entry and exit wounds, then bound them tightly with clean bandages. With the immediate crisis addressed, Sam helped the warrior drink from his canteen, then assessed the man more thoroughly. Despite his injury, he was powerfully built, with the weathered face of someone in his 4th decade. His clothing was finely made, decorated with intricate beadwork and feathers. Most tellingly, he wore an eagle feather in his long black hair, a sign of leadership. "I'm Sam," he said, tapping his chest. "Samuel Walker." "Eagle feather," the warrior replied, gesturing to himself with a weak hand. "Chief." Sam nodded, suspicions confirmed. He'd just treated a Comanche chief, possibly making himself a target for both the tribe and the army in the process. But the deed was done, and his patient needed continued care. "We stay here tonight," Sam said, gesturing to the small ravine. "Move tomorrow when you're stronger." Eagle Feather didn't respond verbally, but his slight nod was agreement enough. The chief's eyes soon closed, his breathing steadier than before, but still worryingly shallow. The poison was in his system, and the poultice might slow but not stop its effects. Sam would need to monitor him closely through the night. As darkness fell fully, Sam built the fire higher, no longer concerned about Blackwood spotting the flames. A larger threat now loomed. If this was indeed a chief, his people would be searching for him. How they might react to finding their leader in the hands of a white doctor was impossible to predict. Sam checked Eagle Feather's pulse periodically through the night, noting with growing concern that the chief's skin grew hotter as the hours passed. By midnight, he was clearly feverish, murmuring in his native tongue, and occasionally trying to rise before Sam gently restrained him. The poison was advancing despite their efforts. "Stay with me, Chief," Sam said, replacing the warm cloth on Eagle Feather's forehead with a cooler one. "Your people need you to fight this." Whether from the fever or genuine understanding, Eagle Feather's eyes opened, focusing on Sam with surprising clarity. "My son," he said hoarsely. "Running Wolf, tell him. Snake Tree comes from Shadow Hunter." The statement seemed important, laden with meaning beyond Sam's understanding of tribal politics, but he recognized the urgency in the chief's voice. "You'll tell him yourself," Sam insisted, helping Eagle Feather drink a tea made from willow bark to reduce the fever. "We'll find your people tomorrow." The chief shook his head weakly. "No, you go. Dawn. Follow River to Split Rock. Find Shadow. Wolf Band." Sam understood the chief was offering him a chance to leave, to avoid being found by potentially hostile warriors. It was the sensible course of action. But as a doctor who had already failed to save an entire town, abandoning a patient was unthinkable. "I'm staying," Sam said firmly. "We leave together or not at all." A ghost of a smile touched Eagle Feather's lips before he drifted back into restless sleep. Sam continued his vigil, changing the poultice every few hours and fighting the chief's rising fever with cool compresses. By dawn, he was exhausted but resolute. Eagle Feather was still alive, though the poison clearly advanced through his system. With the first light, Sam fashioned a crude travois from pine branches and his blanket. He helped the semi-conscious, their chief onto the makeshift stretcher, securing him as comfortably as possible before beginning the arduous task of dragging it along the riverside. The going was slow and difficult, with Sam having to navigate around obstacles while minimizing jolts to his patient. The sun had climbed halfway to its zenith when Sam heard them, the soft but distinctive sound of hoofbeats approaching from upstream. He paused, muscles tensing as he scanned the path ahead. There was nowhere to hide on the exposed riverbank, and he couldn't move quickly enough with the travois to escape. Around the bend came 5 mounted warriors, their faces painted for battle, weapons ready. They pulled up sharply at the sight of Sam standing beside their fallen chief. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the lead warrior spurred his horse forward, spear leveled at Sam's chest. "Wait!" Sam called out, stepping in front of Eagle Feather protectively. "He's alive! Your chief is poisoned. Snake tree poison." The warriors exchanged glances, the name of the toxin clearly meaningful to them. The lead warrior dismounted, cautiously, his dark eyes never leaving Sam as he approached the travois. Seeing Eagle Feather's condition, he barked orders to the others in Comanche. 2 warriors immediately dismounted and came to the chief's side, examining him with grave expressions. The oldest of them inspected Sam's handiwork. The poultice, the bandaging, the careful extraction of the arrow, then looked up at Sam with guarded respect. "You medicine man?" he asked in heavily accented English. "Doctor," Sam confirmed, "your chief needs help quickly. The poison has been in his system too long." The old warrior conferred briefly with the others before turning. Back to Sam. "You come. Help Chief Eagle Feather, or you die here." It wasn't much of a choice, but Sam nodded agreement. "I'll need my medical bag." The warriors transferred Eagle Feather to a proper horse-drawn travois, handling him with reverent care. They allowed Sam to keep his medical bag, but took his revolver. One warrior gestured for Sam to mount behind him. With a last glance at the river that had guided him this far, Sam climbed awkwardly onto the horse, holding onto the warrior's waist as they set off at a brisk pace. They traveled for hours, leaving the riverside and cutting across golden prairie toward distant foothills. Sam's medical concern grew with every passing mile. Eagle Feather's fever continued to rise, and the chief had not regained consciousness since their departure from the ravine. The poison was winning. As the sun began its descent, they crested a rise, and Sam saw the encampment spread before them. Dozens of teepees arranged in a semicircle around a central fire pit, horses corralled nearby, and people moving about in the daily rhythms of tribal life. At their approach, activity in the camp ceased, all eyes turning to the returning party and their unexpected guest. The warriors escorted Sam directly to a large teepee near the center of the encampment. Inside, they carefully transferred Eagle Feather to a bed of furs. The interior was smoky and dim, but Sam could make out elaborate paintings on the hide walls depicting hunts and battles. A fire burned in a central pit, tended by an elderly woman who studied Sam with unnerving intensity. Morning Star, the late warrior said, gesturing to the woman. She medicine of tribe. You work together. Morning Star approached Eagle Feather, her gnarled hands moving with surprising gentleness as she examined his wounds. She spoke rapidly to the warriors, who responded with growing concern. Sam caught the name Shadow Hunter several times in their exchange. What is she saying? Sam asked. The English-speaking warrior turned to him. Shadow Hunter is Chief's rival, wants to lead tribe. Arrow is his. Chief was hunting alone, forbidden for Chief. Shadow Hunter says spirits angry if Chief breaks law. The political dynamics became clearer. This wasn't just an attempted murder, it was a power play, disguised as divine retribution. The poison is advancing quickly, Sam said. We need stronger medicine. Morning Star seemed to understand despite the language barrier. She opened a small bundle of herbs and roots, showing them to Sam one by one. Some he recognized from his limited knowledge of native medicines: echinacea, yarrow, golden seal. Others were completely foreign. For the next several hours, Sam and Morning Star worked side by side, combining their knowledge in a desperate effort to save Eagle Feather. The old medicine woman prepared powerful teas that Sam helped administer to the unconscious chief. Sam, in turn, used his surgical skills to reopen and drain the wound, flushing it with an herbal solution. Morning Star prepared. Night fell over the camp, but neither healer stopped their work. Sam lost track of time, focused entirely on the battle against the poison coursing through Eagle Feather's veins. At some point, a young man entered the teepee, tall and proud-like. The chief, but younger, his face a mask of controlled grief. Running Wolf, the warrior translator explained quietly, Chief's son. Running Wolf approached his father's side, speaking softly in Comanche. Though Sam couldn't understand the words, the emotion behind them was universal. A son fearing the loss of his father. The young man looked up at Sam, his eyes asking the question he didn't voice. The next few hours will tell, Sam said honestly. We're doing everything we can. As midnight approached, Eagle Feather's fever reached a crisis point. His body shook with chills, then burned with heat that seemed to radiate from within. Sam and Morning Star worked in grim silence, both recognizing the critical juncture they'd reached. Outside, Sam could hear the low, rhythmic sound of chanting as the tribe held vigil for their leader. Just before dawn, the change came. Eagle Feather's breathing, which had been shallow and rapid, gradually steadied. His skin, burning hot for hours, began to cool. Sam checked his pulse and found it stronger, more regular. Morning Star noticed too, her weathered face breaking into a smile of relief. The poison breaks, she said in halting English, the first words she'd spoken directly to Sam. Great Spirit listens. By sunrise, Eagle Feather had opened his eyes, weak but lucid. His gaze immediately found Sam, recognition and something more profound in his expression. You stayed, the chief said simply. I'm a doctor, Sam replied. It's what I do. Eagle Feather studied him for a long moment. No. Many white medicine men let Comanche die. You different. Before Sam could respond, the teepee flap opened, and a tall, imposing warrior entered. Unlike the others, his face was painted black and red, his expression cold and calculating. At his appearance, Morning Star tensed, and Running Wolf moved, protectively closer to his father. Shadow Hunter, Eagle Feather identified him, his voice stronger than Sam expected. Shadow Hunter surveyed the scene, his eyes lingering on the extracted arrowhead with its traces of poison. His face betrayed nothing, but Sam sensed the man's displeasure at finding the chief alive. You break hunting law, Shadow Hunter said, to Eagle Feather. Great Spirit punish. No, Eagle Feather replied firmly. You poison arrow, try to take my place. The accusation hung in the air, creating a palpable tension. Shadowhunter's hand moved subtly toward his knife, but before he could act, Running Wolf stepped forward, speaking rapidly in Comanche and pointing at the arrowhead. The English-speaking warrior leaned towards Sam. Running Wolf says poison is made only by Shadowhunter's family. No one else knows making. Shadowhunter's eyes darted between those present, calculating his options. With a final cold glance at Eagle Feather, he backed out of the tepee without addressing the accusation. "He will try again," Eagle Feather said once Shadowhunter had gone. "Not today, but soon." "You need to rest," Sam advised, checking the chief's wounds for any signs of renewed infection. "Your body has fought hard." Eagle Feather nodded, but caught Sam's wrist in a surprisingly strong grip. "You save my life. Now life is yours." Sam wasn't entirely sure what the chief meant, but he recognized the solemnity of the moment. "I was just doing what any doctor would do." "No," Eagle Feather insisted. "You risked life for enemy. Bring me to my people. Stay when could run. This not forgotten." The chief released his grip and closed his eyes, exhaustion finally claiming him. Morningstar gestured for Sam to follow her outside, where the morning sun illuminated a camp in the midst of both celebration and tension. Warriors gathered in small groups, many casting glances toward Shadowhunter, who stood apart with his own followers. "Chief live," Morningstar said, her voice low. "Shadowhunter plan fail. Now danger for you too." Sam understood. By saving Eagle Feather, he had inserted himself into tribal politics and made a powerful enemy. But the alternative, letting a man die when he could have saved him, was never a real option. "What happens now?" Sam asked. Morningstar pointed toward the rising sun. "Council meets, decides fate of Shadowhunter." She paused, studying Sam with those penetrating eyes. "Decides fate of you also." With that cryptic statement, she left, him standing outside the chief's tepee, a stranger in a world far removed from the Boston Medical School where his journey had begun. Sam felt the weight of dozens of stares, some curious, some hostile, all evaluating the white doctor who had saved their chief and upset the balance of power. In saving one life, Sam realized, he had changed the course of many, including his own. Whether that change would lead to a new beginning or a swift end remained to be seen. But for the first time since fleeing the burning settlement of Riverdale Junction, Samuel Walker felt the return of something he'd thought lost forever in the wilderness: purpose. The council gathering began shortly after midday. Sam remained near the chief's tepee, uncertain of his status, guest or prisoner. Running Wolf had brought him food and water, but offered no information about what was to come. Throughout the morning, Sam observed the camp dynamics with a physician's attentive eye. Shadowhunter and his followers, perhaps 15 warriors, kept to themselves on the eastern edge of the encampment. The majority of the tribe seemed to support Eagle Feather, but the division was clear and concerning. As the sun reached its zenith, Running Wolf returned, dressed now in ceremonial attire with vibrant paint streaking his face. "You come," he said simply, gesturing for Sam to follow him. Sam was led to a large circular area at the center of the camp, where 20 or more elders and senior warriors sat in a wide ring. Eagle Feather was there, propped up on furs, but present despite his weakness. His face showed strain, but his eyes were clear and determined. Shadowhunter sat opposite him, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. Running Wolf directed Sam to a spot just behind Eagle Feather, then took his place at his father's side. No one spoke as the last members of the council settled into place. Finally, an elderly warrior with a deeply lined face and numerous battle scars rose to his feet. This council, called by Eagle Feather, chief of Shadow Wolf Band, the old warrior, announced in surprisingly good English, clearly for Sam's benefit. "Two matters before us. First, accusation against Shadowhunter. Second, the White Medicine Man." The elder gestured to the poisoned arrowhead, which had been placed on a ceremonial cloth in the center of the circle. This weapon found in our... Oh, Chief, Shadowhunter says it punishment from spirits because Eagle Feather hunted alone. Eagle Feather says it attempt to kill, take power. Shadowhunter stood, his voice carrying across the gathering. I speak truth. Chief knows law, no hunt alone. Spirits angry when old ways broken. I not put arrow there. Sam noticed how carefully the warrior phrased his denial. He hadn't personally fired the arrow, but that didn't mean he hadn't ordered it done or provided the poison. Eagle Feather clearly caught the nuance as well, his eyes narrowing slightly. The poison, Eagle Feather said, his voice weaker than normal but steady. Snake tree, only Shadowhunter family knows making. At this, murmurs spread through in council. The elder who spoke English turned to Sam. White medicine man, you find arrow. What you see? All eyes turned to Sam. He felt the weight of tribal politics pressing on him, knowing his words could tip the balance one way or another. He chose them carefully. The arrow was poisoned intentionally, he said, meeting the elder's gaze directly. It wasn't a hunting accident. Someone wanted the chief dead and used a method that would make it seem like illness, not murder. The elder nodded gravely, then addressed Sam again. And why you help enemy of your people? Many whites want Comanche dead. Sam thought of his years as a battlefield surgeon, of the oath he'd taken in medical school, of the faces of every patient. He'd fought to save regardless of the uniform they wore. I'm a healer, he said simply. When someone is suffering, I help. It doesn't matter who they are or where they come from. That's my oath. The elder studied him for a long, measuring moment, then turned to address the council in Comanche. The discussion that followed was intense, with various council members speaking in turn. Though Sam couldn't understand the words, he recognized the shifting alliances and arguments from his time watching Boston politicians debate. Some gestures seemed supportive of Shadowhunter, while others clearly favored Eagle Feather. After nearly an hour of deliberation, the English-speaking elder stood again. Council has decided. Evidence shows Shadowhunter guilty of attempt on Chief's life, but proof not complete. Shadowhunter banished from camp for 1 moon cycle, if more. Proof found, punishment will be death. Shadowhunter's face remained impassive, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. With deliberate slowness, he rose to his feet, his gaze locking with Eagle Feather's. I go, he said coldly, but this not finished. Shadow Wolf Band needs strong leader, not one who breaks ways. With that, he strode from the council circle, followed by his closest supporters. Sam could tell from Eagle Feather's expression that this outcome, while better than nothing, was far from satisfactory. A month's banishment would do little to resolve the threat. The elder turned his attention to Sam. Now, council decides fate of White Medicine Man. Sam straightened his shoulders, ready to accept whatever judgment came. Samuel Walker, Eagle Feather said, using Sam's full name for the first time. You save my life when could have left me. You bring me to my people when could have run. You speak truth to council when could have stayed silent. The chief struggled to his feet, waving away Running Wolf's attempt to assist him. Despite his weakness, he stood tall, addressing the entire gathering. In old times, when man saves chief's life, he becomes blood brother. This is our way. Samuel Walker will be my blood brother. Any who harm him, harm me. A murmur rippled through the assembly. The elder looked surprised, but not displeased. This has not happened in many seasons, he said. Not since my grandfather's time has white man become blood brother. It is my right as chief, Eagle Feather stated firmly, unless council objects. The elder conferred briefly with the other leaders, then nodded. Council accepts. Ceremony at sunset. As the gathering dispersed, Running Wolf approached Sam, his expression a mixture of curiosity and lingering suspicion. "You understand what this means?" he asked. "Blood brother is family, forever." Sam shook his head. "I'm not sure I do understand. I was just doing my duty as a doctor." Running Wolf studied him, as if trying to puzzle out whether Sam was being obtuse or genuinely didn't grasp the significance. "Father, not give this honor lightly. When sun sets, you no longer white man. You become Comanche, part of tribe, part of family." The implications slowly dawned on Sam. This wasn't just a symbolic gesture of thanks, it was an adoption, a fundamental change in identity and allegiance. In saving Eagle Feather, he was being offered a new life among people most whites considered enemies. "What about Shadowhunter?" Sam asked, glancing toward the eastern edge of the camp where the banished warrior's followers still lingered. "Won't this make things worse?" Running Wolf's face hardened. "Shadowhunter already hate you for saving Father. Nothing changes this. As blood brother, you have protection of whole tribe." As the day progressed, Sam witnessed the preparations for the evening ceremony. Despite his weakened state, Eagle Feather insisted on overseeing the arrangements himself, directing his people from a seated position outside his teepee. Morning Star brought special paints and ceremonial items, laying them out with reverent care. Sam used the time to check on Eagle Feather's wounds, which were healing remarkably well, given the circumstances. The poison appeared to be fully neutralized, though the chief would need more time to regain his strength. As Sam changed the dressing, Eagle Feather spoke quietly, away from the ears of others. "You have doubts," he observed. Sam hesitated, then nodded. "I'm honored, but I'm not Comanche. I've lived my whole life as a white doctor. I'm not sure I can be what your people need me to be." Eagle Feather smiled faintly. "Blood brother not same as becoming Comanche. You keep your ways, your medicine, but you gain family, protection, place, and we gain your knowledge, your skills." He paused, his dark eyes holding Sam's. "You have home here now. No need to wander alone." The perceptiveness of the observation struck Sam deeply. Since the war, he had indeed been wandering, from Boston to field hospitals to frontier settlements, never truly belonging anywhere. Even in Riverdale Junction, he'd kept himself somewhat apart, the town doctor, but not fully integrated into the community. "What happens after the ceremony?" Sam asked. "You stay, learn our ways," Eagle Feather replied. "When I am strong, we travel to Fort Laramie. You speak for me to white soldiers, help make peace. Shadowhunter wants war. I want our people to survive." As sunset approached, Sam was led to a secluded spot by the river where Morning Star helped him wash according to tribal custom. She provided him with new clothing, a simple buckskin shirt and leggings, and painted symbolic patterns on his face and hands with red and black pigments, all while singing softly in Comanche. When they returned to the camp, the entire tribe had gathered around a massive central fire. Eagle Feather waited, dressed in full ceremonial regalia despite his recent brush with death. The firelight gleamed off the intricate beadwork of his clothing and the eagle feathers in his headdress, transforming him from an injured man to a figure of unmistakable authority. The ceremony began with drumming and songs that seemed to vibrate through the very earth beneath Sam's feet. The English-speaking elder narrated the proceedings in both Comanche and English, explaining each step for Sam's benefit. "Blood brother ceremony very old," he told Sam. "Binds two men stronger than birth brothers. Share blood, share life, share death." Eagle Feather and Sam were positioned on opposite sides of the fire. Morning Star approached with a small, ornate knife, its handle decorated with porcupine quills and feathers. With solemn dignity, she made a small cut on Eagle Feather's palm, deep enough to draw blood, but no more. She then did the same to Sam's left hand. "Now," the elder instructed. "Join. Hands across fire." Sam reached across the flames, feeling their heat on his face as he clasped Eaglefeather's bleeding palm against his own. The chief's grip was strong despite his recent illness, his eyes reflecting the firelight as he began to speak in Comanche. The elder translated, "I, Eaglefeather, take this man's blood as my own. His enemies are my enemies, his family is my family, his life is my life. Until the Great Spirit calls us to the hunting grounds beyond, we are brothers." The elder nodded to Sam, indicating he should repeat the oath. Sam spoke clearly, aware of the gravity of the moment and the hundreds of eyes upon him. "I, Samuel Walker, take this man's blood as my own. His enemies are my enemies, his family is my family, his life is my life. Until death claims us both, we are brothers." Their hands remained joined as Morning Star wrapped a woven band of red and white around their wrists, binding them together, symbolically. The drums reached a crescendo, then fell silent. In the sudden quiet, Eaglefeather spoke again, this time in English for all to hear. "From this night, Samuel Walker has two names. To whites, he remains Samuel Walker, medicine man. To Comanche, he is healing hands, blood brother to chief, friend to Shadow Wolf Band." A cheer rose from the gathered tribe, the sound echoing across the prairie. Morning Star unwound the binding from their wrists, and Eaglefeather pressed something into Sam's palm, a medallion made of polished bone, carved with symbols on both sides. "Half stays with you," Eaglefeather explained, showing Sam that the medallion was split into two interlocking pieces. "Half stays with me. If we are ever separated, these will bring us together again." The formalities complete, the gathering transformed into a celebration. Food was shared, music played, and dances performed around the great fire. Sam found himself welcomed with surprising warmth by most of the tribe, though he noted that some, particularly those allied with Shadow Hunter, kept their distance. Running Wolf approached as the night deepened, offering Sam a cup of ceremonial drink. "My father trusts you," he said, his tone indicating that while he respected his father's decision, his own judgment remained reserved. "I watch over him many years. Now you become his brother in one night." "I didn't ask for this honor," Sam replied honestly, "but I won't betray his trust or yours." Running Wolf considered this, then nodded once. "Shadow Hunter not give up so easily. He go now. But his friends still here. You watch careful healing hands." The warning was clear, and Sam appreciated the younger man's directness. "Where will Shadow Hunter go?" "To other bands," Running Wolf said grimly. "Gather support. Maybe to white soldiers. Tell lies about us." He glanced toward where Eaglefeather sat among the elders. "Father wishes peace. Shadow Hunter wishes war. He thinks war make him great chief." Sam understood the dangerous dynamics at play. Shadow Hunter might well try to provoke conflict between the army and the Shadow Wolf Band, positioning himself as the strong leader needed in troubled times. Eaglefeather's approach of cautious diplomacy could easily be portrayed as weakness. "What can I do?" Sam asked. Running Wolf studied him thoughtfully. "Learn our ways. Learn to ride, hunt, speak our language. When father is strong, go with him to Fort Laramie. Show soldiers not all Comanche want war." He paused, then added with unexpected candor, "Show our people not all whites want us dead." As the celebration continued around them, Sam realized the profound responsibility he'd accepted. He was no longer just a doctor tending to a patient. He had become a bridge between worlds, with lives depending on his ability to navigate both. The medallion Eaglefeather had given him felt heavy in his hand, a physical manifestation of the bond that now tied him to this place and these people. For the first time since the war, Samuel Walker belonged somewhere. Whether that belonging would bring healing or destruction to himself and his newfound family remained to be seen. But as he looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight, some welcoming, some wary, all watching to see what this white medicine man would do next, he knew there was no turning back. The path forward led not to Boston or any white settlement, but deeper into the world of the Comanche. And somewhere out there, Shadow Hunter waited, nurturing his hatred and planning his return. The arrow that had brought Sam and Eagle Feather together had set in motion events that would test this blood brotherhood to its limits, and perhaps determine the fate of the entire Shadow Wolf band. The first rays of dawn spilled over the horizon, bathing the Shadow Wolf encampment in soft amber light. Sam stood at the edge of the village, watching the day begin. 2 weeks had passed since the Blood Brother ceremony had bound his fate to Eagle Feathers. 2 weeks of learning, adapting, and navigating the complexities of life among the Comanche. He ran his thumb over the bone medallion that hung from a leather cord around his neck, a constant reminder of the oath he had taken. Eagle Feather carried its twin, the two halves designed to fit together perfectly, just as their alliance was meant to bridge 2 worlds. "Healing hands," a voice called behind him. Sam turned to see Running Wolf approaching, already dressed for the hunt. In the days following the ceremony, the chief's son had gradually shifted from suspicion to cautious acceptance of Sam's presence, particularly as he saw how diligently the doctor worked to learn Comanche ways. "Dawn comes earlier each day," Sam replied in halting Comanche. His grasp of the language remained rudimentary, but he was making progress. Morning Star had proven to be a patient if demanding teacher. Running Wolf nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes at Sam's effort to speak his language. "Today, we ride to Western Hills. Good hunting there. Father says you ready." Sam raised an eyebrow. He had been training with Running Wolf daily, learning to ride properly, to track, to move silently through the prairie grass. But actually joining a hunting party was a significant step. It meant Eagle Feather believed him capable enough to contribute rather than be a liability. "Your father is generous with his confidence," Sam said. "I'm not sure I've earned it yet." Running Wolf's expression remained serious, but there was a glint of something almost like humor in his eyes. "Father says White Doctor thinks too much, needs to feel heartbeat of Earth, not just people." Sam smiled at that. Eagle Feather had indeed been pushing him to develop intuition alongside his careful analytical approach to medicine and life. The chief maintained that true healing came from understanding the patient's spirit as well as their body, a philosophy that had initially seemed mystical to Sam, but was gradually revealing its practical wisdom. As they walked back toward the center of the camp, Sam observed the morning activities with growing familiarity. Women tended cooking fires or worked on crafts, children ran errands or played games that Sam now recognized as training for future hunting and warfare, and warriors prepared for the day's duties of hunting, scouting, or standing guard. There was an ordered efficiency to it all that reminded Sam of a well-run field hospital, everyone knowing their role and executing it with practiced skill. Eagle Feather sat outside his teepee, his strength notably improved from the week before. The wound had healed cleanly, and while traces of the poison lingered in occasional moments of weakness, the chief had regained most of his vigor. He watched Sam's approach with a considering eye. "So Running Wolf tells me I'm joining the hunt today," Sam said, settling beside the chief. Eagle Feather nodded. "Time you learn where medicine comes from, not just in pouch or book." He gestured toward the hills to the west. "Many plants there, good for healing, good for strengthening." Sam understood the chief's intent. This wasn't just about learning to hunt. It was about deepening his knowledge of native medicine, seeing firsthand the plants that Morning Star had been teaching him to identify and use. It was a thoughtful integration of Sam's existing skills with new knowledge. "I'd be honored," Sam replied, genuinely appreciative of the opportunity, though I can't promise I'll be much help with the actual hunting. Eagle Feather smiled slightly. You learn. Patience is warrior's first weapon. The hunting party assembled shortly after the morning meal. Running Wolf, 4 other warriors, and Sam. Each man carried a bow, quiver of arrows, and knife. Sam had been provided with similar equipment, though he suspected his role would be more observational than active. His marksmanship with the bow remained embarrassingly poor, despite Running Wolf's instruction. As they prepared to depart, Eagle Feather approached, speaking quietly to Running Wolf. Sam caught fragments of their conversation, enough to understand that the chief was instructing his son to remain vigilant, not just for game, but for any sign of Shadow Hunter's return. The banished warrior's month of exile was only half completed, but no one believed he would necessarily honor the terms. The ride to the western hills took most of the morning. Sam had grown more comfortable on horseback, though he still lacked the natural ease of the Comanche warriors who seemed almost part of their mounts. Running Wolf set a measured pace, occasionally pointing out tracks or signs that Sam would have missed entirely. A disturbed patch of grass indicating a deer had bedded down, droppings that revealed the passage of a small herd of buffalo, the subtle displacement of stones suggesting a coyote had passed by. By midday, they had reached the foothills and dismounted to continue on foot. The terrain was more varied here. Stands of cottonwood trees along a narrow stream, patches of wildflowers in protected valleys, rocky outcroppings that offered vantage points across the rolling landscape. Running Wolf directed 2 warriors to circle north, while he, Sam, and the others moved through a promising valley where deer tracks were plentiful. There, Running Wolf whispered, pointing ahead to where the valley narrowed. Whitetail, female, 2 young ones. Sam squinted, seeing nothing at first. Then, as his eyes adjusted to the dappled shadows beneath the trees, he made out the delicate form of a doe and 2 fawns grazing peacefully near the stream. They were beautiful, moving with a fluid grace that made Sam reluctant to see them. Armed, reading his hesitation, Running Wolf spoke softly. We take only the mother. Young ones not survive winter anyway without her. Better to take 1 life than waste 3. The pragmatic compassion in this approach struck Sam. It wasn't senseless killing, but a carefully considered act that acknowledged both necessity and responsibility. Running Wolf nocked an arrow, his movements deliberate and silent. Sam watched, his technique noting the perfect stillness of his body, the controlled breathing, the focus in his eyes. The arrow flew true, striking the doe in the chest. She bolted a few steps, then collapsed. The fawns scattered into the underbrush, their white tails flashing alarm. Running Wolf approached the fallen animal with reverence, speaking words in Comanche that Sam recognized as a thanksgiving for the sacrifice of the deer's life. This is good medicine, Running Wolf said, gesturing for Sam to join him. Come, I show you. For the next hour, Running Wolf demonstrated how to properly dress the deer, explaining which parts were used for what purpose. Not just meat for food, but sinew for bowstrings, hide for clothing, bones for tools, organs for specific medicines. Nothing was wasted. Everything had purpose. This, Running Wolf said, carefully removing the gallbladder, mix with certain plant, cure fever, like father had. He pointed to another organ, this help woman having difficult birth. Sam watched attentively, mentally cataloging these unfamiliar remedies alongside his formal medical training. Some aligned with what he already knew. Bile salts did indeed help with certain digestive ailments, while others challenged his understanding of medicine entirely. As Running Wolf worked, Sam explored the nearby area, identifying plants Morning Star had taught him about. He found yarrow with its feathery leaves, wild mint growing near the stream, and a patch of echinacea with its distinctive purple coneflowers. He carefully gathered samples of each, storing them in the leather pouch Morning Star had given him. "You have good eye now," Running Wolf commented, noticing Sam's growing collection. "2 weeks ago you see nothing but grass and weeds." Sam smiled at the backhanded compliment. "I'm learning, slowly." With the deer properly prepared and the meat secured, they rejoined the other hunters who had successfully taken a young buck. The day's hunt had been productive, ensuring the camp would eat well for several days. As they prepared to return, Sam felt a genuine sense of accomplishment, not for having contributed much to the actual hunting, but for having begun to see the landscape through Comanche eyes as a living pharmacy and source of sustenance, rather than just wilderness to be traversed or conquered. The afternoon sun had begun its descent when Running Wolf suddenly raised his hand, signaling for silence. The entire party froze, attuned to their leader's warning. Sam scanned the surrounding hills, but saw nothing unusual. Running Wolf dismounted silently, touching the ground and examining something invisible to Sam's untrained eye. His expression darkened. "What is it?" Sam whispered, sliding carefully from his horse. "Many horses," Running Wolf replied quietly. "Not ours. Pass here yesterday, maybe day before." He looked to the east, toward a ridge that obscured their view of the plains beyond. "We go see. Quiet." Leaving 2 warriors with the horses and their hunt, Running Wolf led Sam and the other hunter toward the ridge, moving with the silent precision that still amazed the doctor. They approached from a sheltered angle, using boulders and scrub for cover. When they reached the crest, they lay flat, peering cautiously over the edge. In the valley below, perhaps a mile distant, a column of riders moved steadily across the landscape. Even from this distance, the blue uniforms were unmistakable. Cavalry soldiers from Fort Laramie, at least 20 of them, riding in formation. At their head was a figure that made Running Wolf's body tense beside Sam. "Shadow Hunter," he hissed, pointing to the Comanche warrior who rode alongside a white officer at the front of the column. "He leads blue coats to our camp." Sam's stomach tightened with dread. Shadow Hunter had done exactly what Running Wolf had feared, gone to the army with tales that would serve his own purposes, likely painting Eagle Feather's band as hostile. "We must warn the camp," Sam said urgently. Running Wolf nodded, already backing away from the ridge. "You fastest rider now. Go to father. Tell what we see. We follow, watch soldiers." Sam wanted to protest. Surely one of the Comanche warriors would be better suited for this vital task, but he recognized the logic. Running Wolf and the others needed to monitor the soldiers' movements. And while Sam was not the most skilled rider, he knew the shortest route back to camp. Within moments, Sam was galloping across the prairie, pushing his horse harder than he ever had before. The animal seemed to sense the urgency, stretching into a powerful stride that ate up the distance. Sam's mind raced ahead to the camp, imagining the chaos that would ensue if the cavalry arrived unannounced. There were children there, elders, women, people who would be vulnerable in any conflict. The sun was low on the horizon when Sam crested the final rise and saw the Shadow Wolf encampment below. He urged his mount down the slope, drawing curious and then alarmed looks as he thundered into the village circle. "Soldiers coming!" he shouted in both English and his limited Comanche. "Blue coats! Shadow Hunter leads them!" Eagle Feather emerged from his teepee, his face grave but composed. He barked orders to several warriors, who immediately mounted and rode to establish a perimeter around the camp. Women began gathering children, and Sam saw Morning Star hurriedly collecting her medicines and sacred items. Sam dismounted and quickly recounted what they had seen: the cavalry force, Shadow Hunter's presence, their direction, and likely time of arrival. Eagle Feather listened intently, then placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. "You did well, brother," he said with solemn appreciation. "Now we prepare." "Prepare for what?" Sam asked, dreading the answer. "If it comes to fighting, the soldiers have rifles, training." Eagle Feather shook his head. "No fight, not yet. First we talk." He fixed Sam with a steady gaze. You talk to Blue Coat leader. You tell truth. The realization hit Sam like a physical blow. This was why Eagle Feather had made him blood brother, not just out of gratitude or tribal custom, but with strategic foresight. A white doctor could speak to the army in ways no Comanche could testify to the peaceful intentions of the Shadow Wolf Band, could counter whatever lies Shadow Hunter had told. "I'll do what I can," Sam promised, though doubt gnawed at him. Would the army believe a white man who had gone native as they would see it? Or would they consider him a traitor to his race? "Take this," Eagle Feather said, removing something from around his neck. It was his half of the bone medallion. "Show both pieces together. Proof of bond." Sam nodded, understanding the symbolism. By displaying the complete medallion, he would demonstrate to both sides that he stood between worlds, connected to both yet belonging fully to neither. The camp transformed with impressive efficiency. Within an hour, the most vulnerable members had been moved to a sheltered location away from the main encampment. Warriors positioned themselves strategically, visible enough to discourage attack, but not arranged in a threatening formation. Eagle Feather, dressed now in his finest ceremonial attire, awaited the coming confrontation with dignified calm. As the last light faded from the sky, scouts reported the cavalry's approach. They had slowed their pace, clearly aware they were expected. Eagle Feather ordered torches lit around the central meeting area, creating a well-illuminated space that would prevent any surprise movements from either side. "They come," a scout announced, pointing to the eastern approach where lanterns could now be seen bobbing in the darkness. Eagle Feather turned to Sam. "Go, meet them. Bring leader here, peacefully." Sam mounted his horse, acutely aware of the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He rode slowly toward the approaching cavalry, hands visible, trying to project both confidence and peaceful intentions. As he drew nearer, he could make out individual figures, the captain leading the column, the sergeant beside him, and Shadow Hunter riding just behind, his face a mask of controlled triumph. "Halt!" the captain called as Sam came within hailing distance. "Identify yourself." Sam reined in his horse. "I'm Dr. Samuel Walker, formerly of Riverdale Junction. I'm here to escort you to meet with Chief Eagle Feather of the Shadow Wolf Band." The captain studied him with open suspicion, taking in his mixed clothing, part white, part Comanche, and the medallion displayed prominently on his chest. "Dr. Walker," the officer said slowly, "we received reports you were killed when the settlement was attacked." "The settlement was attacked, yes," Sam confirmed, "but not by the Comanche. It was Jebediah Blackwood and his men clearing the land for the railroad." The captain's eyes narrowed. "That's not what we heard. This man," he gestured to Shadow Hunter, "tells us the Shadow Wolf Band has been raiding settlements, that their chief is gathering warriors for attacks on white towns." "He's lying," Sam said flatly. "Shadow Hunter attempted to murder Chief Eagle Feather. When he failed, he was banished from the tribe. He's using you to take revenge and seize power." Shadow Hunter urged his horse forward, speaking rapidly in heavily accented English. "White doctor bewitched. Chief take his mind with bad medicine. He not see truth now." Sam maintained his composure, addressing the captain directly. "I'm a Harvard-educated physician who served as a field surgeon during the war. I assure you my mind is intact. Come and speak with Chief Eagle Feather yourself. He seeks peace, not conflict." The captain hesitated, visibly weighing his options. Shadow Hunter continued to protest, but Sam could see doubt creeping into the officer's expression. "Captain Harrison," Sam said, having noted the name on the man's uniform, "I give you my word as a doctor and a gentleman that you will be safe. Bring your sergeant if you wish, but leave your men here. Let's prevent bloodshed before it begins." After a moment's consideration, Captain Harrison nodded curtly. Sergeant Mills, you're with me. The rest of you hold position here. If we're not back in 1 hour, you know what to do. Shadowhunter began to follow, but Harrison held up a hand. Not you. You stay here. I want to hear what the chief has to say without your interpretations. The warrior's face darkened with anger, but he couldn't openly defy the captain. He sat rigidly on his horse, watching as Sam led Harrison and Sergeant Mills toward the illuminated camp. As they approached, Sam could feel the tension emanating from the two soldiers. Despite his assurances, they clearly expected some form of trap or ambush. He maintained a steady, unhurried pace, giving them time to observe the camp's peaceful arrangement. The children and most of the women have been moved away, Sam explained, not as a preparation for battle, but to protect them in case your men decided to attack without warning. It's happened before. Harrison didn't respond, but Sam noted how his eyes tracked the visible warriors, counting forces and assessing threat levels. The captain was experienced, cautious, but not overtly hostile. They dismounted at the edge of the torchlight. Eagle Feather stood waiting, flanked by Running Wolf and two elders. The chief's posture was proud but not aggressive, his hands empty of weapons. "Captain James Harrison," Sam said formally, "may I present Eagle Feather, Chief of the Shadow?" "Wolfband, Chief, this is Captain Harrison of the United States Cavalry." Eagle Feather extended his hand in the white man's greeting, a gesture he had clearly learned for such occasions. After a brief hesitation, Harrison shook it. "The chief welcomes you to his camp and appreciates your willingness to speak before and taking action," Sam translated, though Eagle Feather had not yet spoken. It was a liberty he took to establish the right tone, and the chief's slight nod indicated his approval of the words. "I'm here because we've received reports of raids on settlements," Harrison said bluntly. "Your man Shadowhunter claims your band is responsible and is planning more attacks." Sam translated, watching Eagle Feather's face darken at the mention of Shadowhunter. The chief responded in Comanche, his words measured and dignified. "Shadowhunter is no longer of our band," Sam translated. "He was banished for attempting to murder the chief by poison. He seeks to use your soldiers to destroy those who opposed him and take control of the tribe." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "Convenient explanation, Doctor. But why should I believe you over him? For all I know, you've been coerced or—" He glanced at the medallion, converted. Sam met the captain's gaze directly. "Because I know who attacked Riverdale Junction. Captain, I was there. It wasn't the Comanche. It was Blackwood's men. They've been hired to clear out both settlers and natives to make way for the railroad. The company doesn't care how it's done, as long as the land is empty by spring." This clearly caught Harrison off guard. "You're accusing a white businessman of attacking a white settlement? That's a serious charge, Doctor." "It's the truth," Sam insisted, "and I suspect Blackwood may have paid Shadowhunter to stir up trouble between the army and the Comanche. Conflict benefits them both. Shadowhunter gets revenge and power. Blackwood gets the natives removed by the army rather than having to do it himself." Eagle Feather spoke again, gesturing toward the peaceful camp around them. Sam translated, "If we meant to attack whites, would we invite soldiers into our camp? Would we send our families away to safety first? Or would we gather our warriors in secret and strike without warning?" The logic was irrefutable, and Sam could see it working on Harrison. The captain was no fool. He understood military tactics well enough to recognize that the Shadow Wolf Band's behavior didn't align with Shadowhunter's claims. "What proof do you have that this Shadowhunter tried to murder the chief?" Harrison asked, still skeptical, but now willing to consider alternatives. Sam explained about the poisoned arrow, the snake tree toxin known only to Shadowhunter's family, and the tribal council's verdict. As he spoke, Eagle Feather removed his shirt to show the healing wound, evidence that supported their account. Harrison listened carefully, his military discipline never slipping but his expression gradually shifting from suspicion to contemplation. Sergeant Mills remained alert, his hand never straying far from his sidearm, but he too seemed less certain of their mission than when they had arrived. "Captain," Sam said after he had presented their case, "I can't prove Blackwood's connection to Shadowhunter without investigation, but I can tell you with absolute certainty that the Shadow Wolf band has not raided any settlements. I've been living among them for 2 weeks. Their focus has been on hunting, gathering, and preparing for winter, not war." Harrison removed his hat, running a hand through his hair in a gesture of frustration. "This complicates matters, Doctor. I have orders to investigate reports of hostile natives and take appropriate action." "Then investigate fully," Sam urged. "Speak to settlers near Fort Laramie. Ask if they've seen Comanche raiders or Blackwoods men. Send scouts to verify our account of the camp's activities. Just don't start a war based on the word of a man who has every reason to lie." Eagle Feather, who had been following the English conversation with more comprehension than he typically revealed, spoke directly to Harrison in halting but clear English. "Captain, my people survive long winter soon, need peace, need hunt, no want war." He placed his hand over his heart. "Truth here, Shadowhunter truth only here." He pointed to his mouth, indicating empty words. The simple, direct statement seemed to affect Harrison more than all the logical arguments that had preceded it. He studied Eagle Feather's face, apparently, finding something there that helped him reach a decision. "I'll need to report to my commanding officer," he said finally, "but I won't take action against your camp tonight. In the morning, I'll send riders to check the nearby settlements, verify your claims about the lack of raids." Sam translated the captain's words for the benefit of Running Wolf and the elders, though Eagle Feather had understood. The chief nodded his acceptance of this approach. "Stay," Eagle Feather offered, gesturing to the camp. "You men, eat, sleep, safe here." Harrison considered the invitation, then shook his head. "Thank you, but no. I'll return to my men. But I give you my word, we won't advance on your camp without further evidence." He turned to Sam. "Doctor, a word in private?" Sam followed Harrison a few paces away, out of earshot of the others. The captain's expression was troubled but resolute. "What you're doing here is unusual, Walker. Some would call it treason. I call it preventing unnecessary bloodshed," Sam replied evenly, "and fulfilling my oath as a doctor to preserve life." Harrison studied him for a long moment. "Be careful. If Blackwood is doing what you claim, he won't stop at eliminating natives. Anyone who stands in his way becomes a target, even a respected physician." "I'm aware of the risk," Sam acknowledged. "And what about Shadowhunter? He won't take this well. He's already riled up my men with tales of barbaric attacks when I tell them we're standing down for now." Harrison left the implications hanging. "Watch him closely," Sam advised. "He's dangerous and desperate. This setback will only fuel his determination." Harrison nodded grimly. "1 week, Doctor. I'll investigate your claims for 1 week. After that, I follow my orders, whatever they may be." He extended his hand. "For what it's worth, I hope you're right. I've seen enough death in the war to last several lifetimes." Sam clasped the offered hand. "So have I, Captain. So have I." As Harrison and Sergeant Mills mounted their horses to return to their men, Sam felt Eagle Feather's presence beside him. They watched in silence as the 2 soldiers rode away, their lanterns bobbing in the darkness. "He is good man," Eagle Feather said quietly. "Warrior with honor, but still blue coat. Still follow orders." "We have a week," Sam replied. "Time to prepare, either for peace or—" He didn't finish the thought. They both knew what would happen if Harrison's investigation somehow confirmed Shadowhunter's lies, or if his superiors ordered action regardless of his findings. The Shadow Wolf Band would fight bravely, skillfully, but ultimately against overwhelming odds. Eagle Feather's hand came to rest on Sam's shoulder. "You did well, brother. Now we wait. And we pray to Great Spirit that Blue Coat Captain finds truth." As the torchlight flickered across the chief's weathered face, Sam saw both wisdom and weariness there. Eagle Feather had already survived one attempt on his life. Now he faced another threat, more powerful and impersonal. Yet his dignity remained undiminished, his resolve unshaken. In that moment, Sam understood fully why he had been drawn to save this man in the wilderness. It wasn't just his doctor's oath or human compassion. It was recognition of a kindred spirit, someone else who had seen the worst of humanity yet continued to fight for its best possibilities. The bone medallion hung heavy against Sam's chest, its weight a reminder of the commitment he had made. He was no longer just Samuel Walker, frontier doctor. He was Healing Hands, blood brother to a Comanche chief standing at the crossroads of two worlds. And somehow, in the next 7 days, he would have to find a way to prevent those worlds from tearing each other apart. The week Captain Harrison had promised passed with excruciating slowness. Each day, Sam rode to the edge of Shadow Wolf territory, scanning the horizon for approaching cavalry. Each night he returned to the camp with no news, watching as Eagle Feather's people prepared for the possibility of conflict while praying for peace. 5 days into their uneasy wait, a lone rider appeared at dawn. Not from the direction of Fort Laramie, but from the south. The scouts brought him directly to Eagle Feather's teepee, where Sam was assisting Morning Star in preparing a treatment for a child with fever. "Whiskey Dan!" Sam exclaimed, recognizing the grizzled trapper who had occasionally visited Riverdale Junction to trade furs and stories. "What brings you here?" Daniel Cooper dismounted stiffly, his weathered face grave beneath his thick gray beard. He nodded respectfully to Eagle Feather before turning to Sam. "Thought you was dead, Doc," he said bluntly. "Whole settlement gone. Blackwood's men burned what was left after the first attack." He accepted the water Sam offered, drinking deeply before continuing. "Been tracking what happened, found signs that led me here." Eagle Feather gestured for the trapper to sit. Though Whiskey Dan had never been a friend to the Comanche, he had maintained a policy of neutrality in the conflicts between natives and settlers, trading with both, fighting with neither. His presence here was significant. "Tell what you know," the chief said in his careful English. Dan glanced between Eagle Feather and Sam, clearly curious about the doctor's position among the Comanche, but professional enough not to ask directly. "Blackwood's got 30 men now, all armed with repeating rifles. They've been clearing everything between Riverdale and Cooper's Crossing. Settlers, natives, don't matter to them." "The railroad wants the land," Sam said, his suspicions confirmed. Dan nodded. "Pacific Western's paying top dollar for clear passage, but that ain't the worst of it." He leaned forward, lowering his voice despite the privacy of the teepee. "Blackwood's made a deal with someone in the cavalry. Officers at Fort Laramie been issuing orders to pacify hostile elements wherever Blackwood points." Sam and Eagle Feather exchanged alarmed glances. This complicated matters significantly. If corruption extended into the Army's leadership, Captain Harrison's investigation might be undermined, regardless of what he discovered. "You sure about this?" Sam pressed. Dan pulled a folded paper from inside his buckskin jacket. "Found this on a lieutenant who tried to stop me from hunting near Cooper's Crossing. Orders signed by a Colonel Abernathy, authorizing necessary force against settlers or natives who impede the progress of the Pacific Western Railroad." Sam examined the document, his blood running cold at the official letterhead and formal language that disguised what amounted to sanctioned murder. "This is why Harrison was sent here," he murmured. Shadowhunter's claims were just the excuse they needed. Eaglefeather studied the paper, though he couldn't read the English words. "Bluecoat Captain seemed honest man," he said. "Maybe not know of this." "Or maybe he does," Sam countered, his trust shaken by the evidence before him. "We can't assume anyone from Fort Laramie is on our side now." Dan cleared his throat. "There's more. Blackwood's men are moving this way. Heard them talking about finishing the job at Twin Sisters Rocks. That's less than a day's ride from here." The implications were clear. Whether or not Captain Harrison returned with peaceful intentions, Blackwood's forces were closing in. The Shadow Wolf Band faced threats from multiple directions. Eaglefeather rose, his decision made. "We break camp, move to winter grounds in Redstone Canyon early." "Is it defensible?" Sam asked, thinking strategically. "Many caves, narrow passages," the chief confirmed. "Good water, good hunting. Hard to find if you not know way." "I know those. Canyons," Dan offered unexpectedly. "Used to winter there myself, before the army started pushing further west. Your people would be safe there." Eaglefeather studied the trapper thoughtfully. "Why you help, Whiskey Man? Not your fight." Dan's weathered face hardened. "Been living out here 30 years. Seen too many good people, white and red, killed. For someone else's profit. Besides," he added with a crooked smile, "Blackwood's men shot my best pack mule. Take that personal." Despite the gravity of the situation, Sam found himself smiling at the trapper's gruff honesty. Dan Cooper might be rough around the edges, but his moral compass pointed true. Within the hour, the camp was a flurry of organized activity. Teepees came down, possessions were packed, horses were gathered and loaded. Sam marveled at the efficiency with which the entire community prepared to move. There was no panic, no wasted motion, just the practiced rhythm of a people accustomed to following the seasons and the game. By midday, a scout returned with news that quickened their pace. A dust cloud to the northeast, likely cavalry approaching from Fort Laramie. Whether Harrison came with peace or war couldn't be determined, but Eaglefeather was unwilling to risk his people finding out the hard way. "Running Wolf," the chief called to his son. "Take warriors, make false trail west, then circle back to Canyon." Running Wolf nodded, selecting 8 of their best riders. Sam recognized the strategy, a diversion to confuse any pursuers buying. Time for the main group to reach the safety of Redstone Canyon. "I should go with Running Wolf," Sam suggested. "If it's Harrison, I might be able to talk to him." Eaglefeather considered this, then shook his head. "Too dangerous. Shadowhunter may be with them. He wants your death now as much as mine." "Your father's right," Dan interjected. "You're more valuable helping guide the main group." "I know the canyon entrances, but I don't know your people's needs like you do." Sam reluctantly conceded the point. As much as he wanted to intercept Harrison and learn the captain's intentions, his primary responsibility was to the tribe that had adopted him. He helped Morning Star secure her bundles of medicines, then mounted his horse to ride alongside the elder women and children who would need the most protection. The journey to Redstone Canyon was arduous, particularly for the very young and very old. The route took them across exposed prairie before ascending into increasingly rugged terrain. Sam found himself constantly moving among the travelers, checking on a breathless elder here, an exhausted child there, applying his medical skills to ease the journey as much as possible. By sunset, they had reached the first outlying formations of the canyon system, towering red sandstone pillars that glowed like fire in the dying light. Dan Cooper took the lead, guiding them through a narrow passage barely wide enough for 2 horses to walk abreast. The walls rose around them, offering immediate shelter from both the wind and prying eyes. "Main Canyon's about a mile ahead," Dan explained to Sam as they passed beneath a natural arch. "Spring-fed pool, good grazing. In the hidden meadows, caves all along the walls. People been seeking shelter here since long before either of our times." Sam could believe it. There was something primally secure about the embracing stone walls, as if the earth itself had formed a protective barrier against the conflicts of men. As they emerged into the broader canyon, he saw ancient pictographs decorating some of the higher walls, evidence that this place had indeed sheltered generations before them. Eagle Feather directed the establishment of their new camp with the same quiet efficiency that had marked their departure. By nightfall, fires burned in the shelter of the caves, tents and teepees rose in protected alcoves, and scouts had been positioned at all the major approach points. The Shadow Wolf Band had gone to ground, vanishing from the open plains as completely as their namesake. Running Wolf and his warriors returned well after midnight, slipping into camp like shadows. Themselves, Sam, who had been unable to sleep despite his exhaustion, joined the council that gathered immediately around Eagle Feather's fire. "Blue coats follow false trail, half day," Running Wolf reported. "Then stop, argue among themselves. Captain angry, with others. Shadow Hunter there, trying to make soldiers keep following." "Harrison," Sam said, relieved to hear confirmation that the captain appeared to be resisting pressure rather than leading the pursuit. Running Wolf nodded. "But also other officer. Older man with many medals. He not listen to captain. Say, follow orders." "Colonel Abernathy," Dan growled, "the one who signed those orders I showed you." Eagle Feather absorbed this information with a grave expression. "They will find true trail tomorrow. Question is, will they find canyon?" "Not easily," Dan assured him. "I covered our tracks at the entrance, and there are dozens of false canyons and dead ends in these parts. Without a guide who knows the way, they could search for weeks." "Blackwood has trackers," Sam reminded them. "And he's still out there, is somewhere." The gravity of this reality settled over the council. They might have temporarily evaded the immediate threat, but they were effectively trapped. The canyon offered protection, but no escape route if both the cavalry and Blackwood's men converged on their location. "We need to divide our enemies," Sam said after a moment's thought. "If we could draw Blackwood away from the army, or vice versa, or bring Captain Harrison here alone," Eagle Feather suggested. "Show him Whiskey Man's paper, make him understand our truth." It was a risky proposition, but potentially their best hope. If Harrison really was an honorable man, caught in a corrupt situation, he might help them, or at least refuse to participate in an unjust attack. "I'll go," Sam volunteered. "I can find the cavalry camp and speak with Harrison privately." "Too dangerous," Running Wolf objected. "Shadow Hunter watch for you now." "I'll go with him," Dan offered. "2 guns better than 1, and I know how to move without being seen." Eagle Feather considered their options, his expression troubled. "Shadow Hunter know our ways, know these lands. Blackwood have many men, many guns." He looked at Sam, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight. "But we have something they not expect, white medicine man who fight for Comanche." The decision was made. Sam and Dan would leave before dawn, locate the cavalry camp, and attempt to speak with Captain Harrison away from Colonel Abernathy's influence. It was a desperate gambit, but with Blackwood's forces approaching from the south and the cavalry from the east, their alternatives were dwindling rapidly. As the council dispersed and preparations began for their mission, Morning Star approached Sam. The elderly medicine woman had remained silent during the discussions, but now she pressed something into his hand, a small leather pouch containing herbs and what felt like small stones. "Protection," she said simply. "Old magic, strong magic." Sam accepted the gift with appropriate solemnity, tucking it securely inside his shirt. Whether or not he believed in the magic, he respected the knowledge and intention behind it. During his weeks with the tribe, he had seen enough of Morning Star's healing abilities to develop a healthy regard for her understanding of natural medicines. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten when Sam and Dan slipped away from the canyon. They traveled light. 2 horses, weapons, water, and enough food for 2 days. Sam wore a mixture of his original clothing and Comanche garments, allowing him to pass as either a frontiersman or a native from a distance. The bone medallion remained around his neck, hidden beneath his shirt alongside Morning Star's medicine pouch. They rode hard for the first few hours, following the directions Running Wolf had provided to the cavalry's last known position. By mid-morning, they had reached a vantage point overlooking a wide valley. Dan produced a brass spyglass, scanning the landscape methodically. "There," he said finally, handing the glass to Sam, "just beyond that cottonwood stand." Sam focused. The spyglass where indicated and saw the cavalry encampment, tents arranged in military precision, horses picketed nearby, sentries pacing the perimeter. He counted approximately 25 men, including officers. No sign of Blackwood's bunch, Dan observed. Yet. They watched the camp for nearly an hour, noting the routines and identifying key figures. Sam spotted Captain Harrison emerging from a larger tent, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with an older officer wearing a colonel's insignia. Shadowhunter was visible as well, keeping somewhat apart from the soldiers, but clearly involved in their operations. "We need to get Harrison alone," Sam murmured, "away from the colonel and Shadowhunter." Dan studied the camp layout. "He's taking his turn walking the perimeter now. Looks like each officer does a circuit every few hours. If we circle around to the north side, there's a gulch that comes within 50 yards of their sentry line. Might be able to signal him from there without the others seeing." It was their best option. They backtracked and approached the camp from the northern side, using the terrain for cover. By early afternoon, they were positioned in the gulch Dan had identified, watching through the spyglass as Harrison began another circuit of the perimeter. As the captain approached their position, Sam took a significant risk. He removed his hat and briefly stood where the sun would catch his distinctive light hair, just long enough for Harrison to notice before ducking back into cover. It was a calculated gamble, but one that paid off. Harrison's stride faltered momentarily, his head turning subtly toward the gulch before he continued his patrol with deliberate casualness. 10 minutes later, the captain wandered in their direction, appearing to check something about the terrain. When he was within earshot but out of sight of the sentries, Sam called softly, "Captain, in the gulch." Harrison froze, then carefully made his way down the slope as if examining the ground. When he reached the sheltered position where Sam and Dan waited, his expression was a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Dr. Walker," he said quietly, "I should arrest you right now." "But you won't," Sam replied confidently, "because you know something's wrong with this situation." Harrison's jaw tightened. "Colonel Abernathy arrived 2 days ago with orders that supersede mine. He seems particularly determined to find this Shadow Wolf band, despite my reports that I found no evidence of raids or hostile activity." "Because he's working with Blackwood," Sam said bluntly, producing the orders Dan had discovered. "Read this." Harrison scanned the document, his face darkening with each line. This can't be legitimate. It's got the colonel's signature and the fort's seal," Dan pointed out. "Seems plenty official to me." "Official doesn't make it right," Harrison replied, still studying the paper. "This essentially authorizes military support for private commercial interests. It's against every regulation and law." "Blackwood's men destroyed Riverdale Junction," Sam told him. "They're moving this way to clear the land for the railroad, if they join forces with the cavalry under these orders." Harrison handed the document back, his decision evident in his posture. "What do you need from me, Doctor?" "Time," Sam answered simply. "Delay the colonel. Lead your men on false trails. Give Eagle Feather's people a chance to either reach a safer location or negotiate proper terms with the territorial governor." The captain considered this, calculating risks and possibilities. "I can buy you 3 days at most. After that, Abernathy will likely relieve me of command if I continue to impede his progress." 3 days could be enough, Sam assured him. "And there's something else. Blackwood's men are approaching from the south. If you could ensure the cavalry moves northeast instead." Drawing us away from his position, Harrison nodded, understanding the strategy. "I can suggest we've received reports of the band moving toward Fort Laramie. Abernathy's eager enough to protect the fort that he might accept the diversion." A raised voice from the camp interrupted their planning. "Captain Harrison, report your position." "That's the colonel," Harrison muttered. "I need to go. Where can I find you if necessary?" Sam hesitated, unwilling to reveal the canyon's location even to a potential ally. "There's an old trading post 15 miles west of Twin Sisters Rocks. I'll have someone check there each evening at sunset." Harrison nodded briskly. 3 days, Doctor. Make them count." With that, he climbed back up the gulch and called out to the colonel. "Just checking tracks, sir. Nothing to report." Sam and Dan remained hidden until Harrison had rejoined the camp, then carefully retreated to where they'd left their horses. The meeting had gone better than they'd dared hope, but Sam couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. 3 days was very little time to secure the safety of an entire tribe. "What now, Doc?" Dan asked as they rode westward, taking a circuitous route back toward the canyon. "We need to find Blackwood," Sam decided, "confirm his position and strength, then get back to Eagle Feather with everything we've learned." Dan grinned beneath his shaggy beard. "Now you're talking my language. Tracking vermin is what I do best." They adjusted their course southward, moving through increasingly broken terrain where Blackwood's men would likely be advancing. By dusk, they had found signs of recent passage, campfire, remains, discarded items, trampled vegetation, all indicating a sizable group moving with little concern for stealth. "Arrogant bastards," Dan muttered, examining track marks in a muddy stream bed. 30 men at least, heavily loaded horses, moving steady but not rushing. They don't expect any resistance. "Let's get ahead of them," Sam suggested. "There's a ridge 2 miles east that should give us a clear view of their approach." They reached the ridge just as the last light faded from the sky. In the gathering darkness, they could make out the glow of campfires in a valley below. Blackwood's men, settling in for the night less than 10 miles from the entrance to Redstone Canyon. "They'll reach the canyon by tomorrow afternoon at that pace," Dan calculated grimly. "If they find the entrance," Sam reminded him. "You said yourself it's well hidden." Dan spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Hidden from ordinary men, maybe. But Blackwood's got Pawnee trackers with him. Saw their sign back at the stream. They're good, Doc, real good." The situation was deteriorating faster than they had anticipated. Even with Harrison drawing the cavalry northeast, Blackwood's force alone was enough to threaten the Shadow Wolf band if they discovered the canyon entrance. "We need to get back," Sam said urgently. "Warn Eagle Feather." They rode through the night, pushing their horses as hard as they dared over the challenging terrain. By dawn, they were approaching the hidden entrance to Redstone Canyon, both men exhausted but driven by the knowledge that time was running critically short. The sentry recognized them immediately, guiding them through the narrow passage to where Eagle Feather waited with Running Wolf and the tribal council. Sam quickly related everything they had learned: Harrison's cooperation, the colonel's corruption, and most urgently, Blackwood's proximity. "They'll reach the canyon entrance by afternoon," he concluded, "and they have trackers who might find the way in." Eagle Feather absorbed this news with the calm determination that had impressed Sam from their first meeting. "We prepared while you gone. Women, children, elders moved deeper into canyon, warriors ready at all passages." "We can't fight 30 men with repeating rifles," Sam warned. Even with the canyon's protection, the odds are too great. Not fight, Eagle Feather agreed. Survive, hide. This what Comanche do for generations when enemies too many. Running Wolf stepped forward, his face painted for battle despite his father's strategy of evasion. I take warriors, lead Blackwood away from canyon, make him chase shadows while our people go deeper. It was a courageous offer, but likely suicidal. Before Sam could object, Whiskey Dan spoke up. Got a better idea, the trapper said. These canyons are like a maze, right? Let's use that. Guide them in, then get them lost. Real lost. Eagle Feather's eyes narrowed with interest. How? False trails, doubled back tracks, paths that lead to dead ends where they can't turn their horses around easily, Dan explained. I know every twist and false passage in these canyons. We can have them chasing their own tails until their water runs out. It was a strategy of deception rather than direct confrontation, one that played to their knowledge of the terrain, rather than relying on physical force. Sam saw the wisdom in it immediately. And while they're lost in the canyons, he added, we can get word to Captain Harrison about their position. If he brings the cavalry here under the pretense of finding the tribe. Blackwood caught between warriors and blue coats, Eagle Feather finished, understanding the plan. Good, very good. The council quickly divided responsibilities. Dan would create the false trails with help from several warriors. Running Wolf would lead a small group to maintain watch on Blackwood's approach. Sam would prepare a message for Harrison and select a fast rider to deliver it to the trading post rendezvous. As they dispersed to their tasks, Eagle Feather held Sam back, his expression grave. Dangerous plan, brother. Many things must go right. Many things must go right for any plan to succeed, Sam replied. But we have advantages Blackwood doesn't. Expect knowledge of the terrain, allies in unexpected places, and most importantly, a cause worth fighting for. Eagle Feather clasped Sam's shoulder, the gesture conveying both affection and solemn understanding of the stakes. When this done, if we live, you must decide. Decide what? Sam asked. Your path, the chief said simply. Healing hands of Shadow Wolf Band or Dr. Walker of White Man's World cannot be both forever. The truth of this struck Sam deeply. He had been living between worlds since the Blood Brother ceremony, but such a state couldn't be maintained indefinitely. Eventually, he would have to choose where his future lay, with the people who had adopted him or with the civilization that had trained him. But that decision would have to wait. For now, there were lives to protect and a battle of wits to win against men who valued profit above human life. Sam tucked the bone medallion securely inside his shirt, feeling its twin pressed against Eagle Feather's heart. Whatever path he ultimately chose, for this moment, they were truly brothers. Their fates intertwined as surely as the two halves of the carved bone. The sun climbed higher in the sky as they prepared for Blackwood's arrival. In a few hours, the future of the Shadow Wolf Band, and perhaps of Sam himself, would be decided in the twisting passages of Redstone Canyon. Life or death, victory or defeat, would hinge on their ability to transform a place of refuge into a weapon against those who sought to destroy it. And as Sam wrote his urgent message to Captain Harrison, he found himself reciting a Comanche prayer Morning Star had taught him, not because he fully believed in its power, but because he understood now that healing came in many forms, and sometimes the medicine a situation required was courage, strategy, and the unbreakable bonds of brotherhood that transcended blood and race. Dawn broke over Redstone Canyon with an eerie silence. The usual morning sounds of an awakening camp were muted as the Shadow Wolf Band held their collective breath, waiting. 3 days had passed since Sam and Dan had returned with their plan to lure Blackwood's men into the labyrinthine passages of the canyon system. 3 days of meticulous preparation, strategic placement of false trails, and anxious vigilance. Sam stood at the mouth of a shallow cave, midway up the canyon wall, surveying the main canyon below. The band had split into smaller groups, each hidden in different sections of the vast network of passages and caves. From his vantage point, Sam could see nothing that would betray their presence to casual observation. No smoke from cooking, fires, no movement of people or animals, just the timeless stone and the occasional stirring of wind through sparse vegetation. "They're coming!" Running Wolf's voice came from behind as the chief's son climbed nimbly up to Sam's position. Scout spotted them entering the first passage. 28 men, all armed. Sam nodded grimly. "And the cavalry?" "No sign yet. Whiskey Man's rider may not have reached Captain Harrison." The plan had many moving parts, and its success depended on precise timing. Dan Cooper had laid intricate false trails throughout the outer canyons, tracks that would lead Blackwood's men deeper into the maze while avoiding the actual hiding places of the Shadow Wolf band. Meanwhile, a trusted warrior had been sent to the trading post rendezvous with a message for Harrison, detailing Blackwood's location and the evidence of his collaboration with Colonel Abernathy. "We proceed with or without the Blue Coats," Running Wolf said, echoing his father's contingency plan. "Draw Blackwood deep, then seal the passages behind them." Sam understood the strategy. Without water or clear paths back to open country, Blackwood's men would be trapped, weakened, and eventually forced to surrender or retreat in disorder. It was a plan that leveraged the Comanche's superior knowledge of the terrain rather than relying on direct confrontation. "Where's your father?" Sam asked, scanning the canyon floor for any sign of eagle feather. "East caves with elders and children, morning star with him?" Running Wolf's expression remained stoic, but Sam detected the concern beneath. "Father fought Hunter's cough all night." Sam frowned. Eagle feather had been developing a worrying respiratory condition over the past week. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but concerning given the stress and physical demands of their current situation. Morning Star had been treating him with herbal steam inhalations that seemed to help temporarily, but Sam had been considering more aggressive interventions from his medical supplies. "I'll check on him after we confirm Blackwood's men are following the false trails," Sam promised. Running Wolf nodded gratefully before descending back down the rocky path with the silent agility that still impressed Sam after all these weeks. Left alone at his observation post, Sam fingered the bone medallion that hung around his neck, its familiar weight a reminder of the oath that now defined his life. An hour passed in tense silence before Sam heard it, the distant sound of hoofbeats, echoing through the stone corridors that led to the main canyon. He pressed himself deeper into the shadows of his sheltered position, watching as the first of Blackwood's men emerged into the open space below. Jebediah Blackwood himself led the column, his tall figure unmistakable even at a distance. He wore a long black coat despite the warmth of the day, and a distinctive wide-brimmed hat that Sam remembered from the attack on Riverdale Junction. Behind him came his hired guns, a rough assortment of former soldiers, bounty hunters, and outlaws. Drawn by the promise of railroad money, they moved cautiously, clearly aware they were entering potentially hostile territory. 2 Pawnee trackers flanked the group, reading the subtle signs Dan had deliberately left for them to find. Sam held his breath as the trackers examined the canyon floor, concerned they might detect the careful misdirection. After a brief consultation, the trackers pointed toward the western passage, exactly where Dan had planned to lead them. Blackwood nodded, and the column of men turned toward the indicated route. Sam allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction. The first part of their plan was working. As the last of Blackwood's men disappeared into the western passage, Sam climbed, down from his position and made his way swiftly to the eastern caves, where Eagle Feather and the most vulnerable members of the tribe had taken shelter. The network of passages was confusing even to someone who had been learning them for days. To strangers, they would be a baffling, disorienting maze. Sam found Eagle Feather seated near a small, smokeless fire, Morning Star tending to him with a steaming mixture of herbs. The chief looked up as Sam entered, and though his face showed fatigue, his eyes remained clear and alert. "Blackwood follows false trail," Sam reported without preamble. "All of his men." Eagle Feather nodded, suppressing a cough. "Good. Whiskey Man's plan works." He gestured for Sam to sit beside him. "Now we wait." "Let me examine you first," Sam insisted, kneeling next to the chief. He placed a hand on Eagle Feather's forehead, no fever, which was reassuring, then listened to his breathing using a stethoscope from his medical bag. "Congestion in both lungs," Sam diagnosed, frowning. "Your body is fighting, but this environment isn't helping. The dust, the dry air." "Cannot leave now," Eagle Feather said simply. "Must see this done." Sam couldn't argue with that reality. Instead, he prepared a stronger treatment from his own medical supplies, combining them with Morning Star's herbal remedies in a way that had become second nature during his time with the tribe. The old medicine woman watched with approval, their initial wariness of each other's methods having evolved into mutual respect. "Rest as much as possible," Sam instructed, helping Eagle Feather drink the bitter mixture. "And keep breathing the steam Morning Star prepares. It will help clear your lungs." The chief complied without protest, a sign of how poorly he truly felt. Sam exchanged a concerned glance with Morning Star, whose weathered face reflected his own worry. Eagle Feather's condition would need to be monitored closely. The day stretched on with agonizing slowness. Periodic reports came from scouts positioned throughout the canyon system. Blackwood's men proceeding deeper into the western passages, following the deceptive trails with growing frustration as they led to dead ends or circled back on themselves. By mid-afternoon, the reports indicated the bounty hunters had split into smaller groups, trying to map the confusing network of canyons, exactly as Dan had predicted they would. "They're running low on water," Running Wolf reported when he returned from his scouting mission. 2 horses lamed in narrow passages, men arguing among themselves. "And still no sign of the cavalry?" Sam asked. Running Wolf shook his head. "No blue coats." It was disappointing but not unexpected. Their plan had always been designed to succeed with or without military intervention. Still, Sam had hoped Harrison would arrive to witness Blackwood's illegal operation firsthand and take official action against him. As sunset approached, casting long shadows through the canyon, a scout burst into their sheltered alcove, his expression urgent. "Shadow Hunter," he said breathlessly, "with 5 warriors coming from East Passage, not same as Blackwood." The news sent a ripple of alarm through the gathered Comanche. Shadow Hunter's banishment had ended days ago, but they had hoped he would remain with the cavalry rather than striking out on his own. His appearance from an unexpected direction suggested he knew the canyon system better than they had anticipated. "He knows our hiding places," Eagle Feather said grimly, struggling to his feet despite Sam's protests. "Grew up playing in these caves as boy." Running Wolf immediately began issuing orders to warriors nearby, preparing to intercept Shadow Hunter's group before they could reach the vulnerable members of the tribe. Sam found himself caught in an impossible situation, his medical judgment telling him to force Eagle Feather to rest, his loyalty to the tribe urging him to help defend against this new threat. "You stay with Father," Running Wolf told Sam firmly, as if reading his thoughts. "Protect him. I take warriors. Stop Shadow Hunter." Before Sam could respond, the distinctive crack of a rifle shot echoed through the canyon, followed by the sounds of shouting in both English and Comanche. The conflict had begun before they were ready. "Give me your pistol," Eaglefeather demanded, reaching for Sam's revolver. "I not hide while my son fights." Sam reluctantly handed over the weapon, knowing it was futile to argue with the chief in this moment. Instead, he helped Eaglefeather move to a more defensible position deeper in the cave system, instructing Morning Star to lead the women and children to the prearranged emergency shelter even further within the stone labyrinth. The sounds of gunfire intensified, suggesting that Shadowhunter's group had encountered resistance from Running Wolf's warriors. Sam calculated distances and acoustics, trying to determine exactly where the fighting was occurring and whether it might draw Blackwood's attention from the western passages. "We must go help," Eaglefeather insisted, his breathing labored but his determination unchanged. "You can barely stand," Sam countered, supporting the chief with one arm while holding his own rifle ready with the other. "Running Wolf knows what he's doing. Trust him." Even as the words left his mouth, another sound joined the chaos. The thunderous report of multiple rifles firing in sequence, followed by the pounding of hooves on stone. Not from the direction of the fighting, but from the main canyon entrance. "More coming," Eaglefeather said, tensing beside Sam. They waited in breathless silence, listening as the new arrivals galloped into the main canyon. Then, cutting through the echoing gunfire, came a sound that made Sam's heart leap, a bugle call, the unmistakable signal of cavalry. "Harrison?" Sam breathed, relief washing over him. "He came after all?" The gunfire near Shadowhunter's position faltered, then resumed with renewed intensity. Sam could only imagine the confusion as the three separate groups, Running Wolf's warriors, Shadowhunter's renegades, and now the cavalry, converged on the eastern section of the canyon. "I must see," Eaglefeather insisted, pushing away from the cave wall. "My people." Sam couldn't restrain him any longer. Supporting the chief as best he could, he helped Eaglefeather make his way through the passage toward a vantage point overlooking the main canyon. They emerged onto a narrow ledge just in time to witness the cavalry fanning out across the open space below, Captain Harrison at their head. "Find cover," Harrison's voice carried clearly in the canyon acoustics. "Blackwood's men could be anywhere." The soldiers dismounted efficiently, taking positions behind boulders and in the shadows of the canyon walls. Sam noted with relief that Colonel Abernathy was nowhere to be seen. Harrison appeared to be in sole command of the cavalry unit. The sound of gunfire from the eastern passage suddenly intensified. Then a group of figures burst into the main canyon, Shadowhunter and three warriors retreating under pressure from Running Wolf's forces. They pulled up short at the sight of the cavalry, caught between two enemies. "There!" Harrison shouted, pointing toward Shadowhunter. "Those are the men who led us here under false pretenses." Shadowhunter's face contorted with rage and betrayal. He wheeled his horse around, seeking escape, only to find Running Wolf and his warriors emerging from the passage behind him. Trapped and desperate, he raised his rifle toward Harrison. "Sam," Eaglefeather gasped, clutching his chest. "Must stop this. Too much death already." Without hesitation, Sam stepped to the edge of the ledge and called out in a voice that echoed throughout the canyon. "Captain Harrison, Shadowhunter, this ends now." All eyes turned upward. Sam stood exposed on the ledge, Eaglefeather beside him, both clearly visible to everyone below. "Dr. Walker," Harrison acknowledged, raising a hand to prevent his men from firing. "I received your message. We came as soon as we could." "Where's Blackwood?" Sam called back. "Western Canyons," Harrison replied. "We spotted his men entering as we approached. They're scattered, lost in the maze from what we could tell." Shadowhunter, seeing an opportunity in the distraction, suddenly spurred his horse toward a narrow side passage. Before anyone could react, a shot rang out, not from the cavalry or Running Wolf's warriors, but from beside Sam. Eaglefeather lowered the revolver, his expression grim, as Shadowhunter clutched his shoulder and tumbled from his horse. "No more running," the chief said, his voice carrying despite its weakness. "No more hiding. We talk now, all of us." The authority in his tone was unmistakable. Even wounded, Shadowhunter stilled, recognizing the voice of his chief. Harrison signaled his men to hold positions but not advance. Running Wolf and his warriors approached cautiously, weapons ready but not threatening. "I'm coming down," Sam called to Harrison. "With Chief Eagle Feather, we have much to explain." The descent from their perch was painstaking, with Eagle Feather's strength fading rapidly from the exertion and emotion of the confrontation. By the time they reached the canyon floor, the chief was leaning heavily on Sam, his breathing labored, but his dignity intact. Harrison approached alone, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Chief," he acknowledged with a nod. "Doctor." His gaze shifted to the wounded Shadowhunter, who was being tended by one of his own men. "I think you'd better explain what's happening here." "Shadowhunter tried to murder the chief," Sam began, his voice steady. "When that failed, he went to Fort Laramie with lies about raids and attacks that never happened. Meanwhile, Blackwood has been clearing land for the railroad, burning settlements, driving off natives, killing anyone who resists." Harrison's face darkened. "I suspected as much when I found no evidence of the raids Shadowhunter described. But it was only when your messenger reached me with evidence of Colonel Abernathy's corruption that I had real proof." "Abernathy?" Sam questioned. "Under arrest back at Fort Laramie," Harrison confirmed. "Your document was enough to convince my commanding officer to investigate. We found extensive correspondence between the colonel and the railroad. He's been taking bribes to provide military support for their land clearances." The revelation sent a murmur through the gathered Comanche, who had been listening intently despite the language barrier. Running Wolf translated quickly for those who didn't understand English. "And Blackwood?" Sam pressed. Harrison smiled grimly. "That's why we're here. Official orders to apprehend him and his men for the massacre at Riverdale Junction and other settlements. Once we had testimony from survivors and evidence of Abernathy's involvement, the territorial governor authorized immediate action." Eagle Feather, who had been listening silently, suddenly swayed on his feet. Sam caught him, alarmed by the pallor of his skin and the rattling sound of his breathing. "He needs medical attention," Sam told Harrison urgently. "His lungs—" Harrison nodded, immediately ordering 2 soldiers to help. They improvised a stretcher while Sam directed them toward the eastern caves where his medical supplies were stored. Morning Star emerged from hiding as they approached, her concern for Eagle Feather overriding her fear of the soldiers. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Harrison dispatched most of his men to systematically search the western canyons for Blackwood's scattered forces. By nightfall, they had rounded up 23 of the bounty hunters, including Blackwood himself, who was found dehydrated and disoriented in a dead-end passage exactly where Dan Cooper had planned to lead him. Meanwhile, Sam worked desperately to treat Eagle Feather's deteriorating condition. The chief had developed pneumonia, his lungs filling with fluid after weeks of stress, dust, and the exertion of their escape to the canyon. Morning Star prepared her strongest remedies while Sam administered what medicines he had in his depleted supplies. "How is he?" Running Wolf asked when he entered the cave shortly after midnight. The young warrior's face was streaked with dust and sweat, but his eyes were clear and focused only on his father. "Fighting," Sam answered honestly, "but it's severe. The infection has taken hold in both lungs." Running Wolf knelt beside his father, taking one of the chief's hands in his own. Eagle Feather's eyes fluttered open, recognition dawning as he saw his son. "Blackwood?" the chief asked, his voice barely audible. "Captured," Running Wolf assured him. "Blue coats take him away. Shadowhunter, too." Eagle Feather nodded slightly, satisfaction crossing his features before another coughing spell overtook him. Sam helped him sit up, supporting his shoulders as the painful spasms racked his body. "Captain Harrison wishes to speak with you," Running Wolf told his father when the coughing subsided. "About future of our people." Eagle Feather gestured, weakly for Harrison to be brought in. The captain entered respectfully, removing his hat as he approached the chief's bedside. He had shed the formal military demeanor that had characterized their previous meetings, his face showing genuine concern for Eagle Feather's condition. "Chief," Harrison began, kneeling so that Eagle Feather wouldn't have to strain to look up at him. "I've been authorized by the territorial governor to negotiate directly with you regarding your band's status and lands." Sam translated where necessary, though Eagle Feather understood most of the captain's words. The chief's eyes sharpened with interest, despite his physical weakness. "The governor recognizes that the Shadow Wolf band has maintained peaceful relations with settlers," Harrison continued. "In light of recent events, he's prepared to formalize your rights to traditional hunting grounds and establish clear boundaries that will be respected by both the army and future settlements." It was more than they could have hoped for: official recognition of their territory and protection from further encroachment. Eagle Feather's gaze moved from Harrison to Sam, a question in his eyes that needed no translation. "Yes, Harrison," confirmed following the chief's glance. "Dr. Walker's testimony was instrumental in bringing these matters to light. His account of Blackwood's attacks and your band's peaceful intentions carried significant weight with the governor." Eagle Feather nodded slowly, then gestured for Sam to come closer. When the doctor leaned in, the chief spoke in a whisper, meant only for him. "Now you must choose, brother. Your path." The words echoed their conversation from days earlier. With Blackwood captured and an agreement in place to protect the Shadow Wolf band, the immediate crisis had passed. The decision Eagle Feather had spoken of, whether Sam would remain as healing hands of the Comanche or return to his life as Dr. Walker, could no longer be deferred. Sam felt the weight of the bone medallion against his chest, the physical embodiment of his bond with Eagle Feather and his adopted people, yet he also felt the pull of his training, his oath as a physician, and the broader world beyond the Shadow Wolf band. Before he could respond, Eagle Feather was seized by another coughing fit, this one more severe than the last. Sam's medical instincts took over as he worked to ease the chief's breathing, all other concerns temporarily set aside. When the episode finally passed, Eagle Feather lay exhausted, his breathing shallow but slightly less labored. "Rest now," Sam urged, adjusting the chief's blankets. "We'll talk more when you're stronger." But both men knew the illness had progressed too far for simple recovery. The damage to Eagle Feather's lungs, exacerbated by the stress of recent events, had reached a critical point. Without the resources of a modern hospital, resources that didn't exist anywhere within hundreds of miles, the prognosis was grave. Captain Harrison seemed to sense the gravity of the situation and tactfully withdrew, promising to return in the morning to continue discussions. Running Wolf remained at his father's side, his stoic expression masking the depth of his concern. Through the long night, Sam and Morningstar worked in silent partnership, combining their knowledge and skills in a desperate effort to save the chief's life. They administered tinctures and poultices, managed fever with cool compresses, and helped Eagle Feather through increasingly frequent coughing spells. Dawn broke with a pale golden light that filtered into the cave, illuminating Eagle Feather's face. His breathing had stabilized somewhat, though it remained labored. His eyes, when they opened, were clear and focused, a good sign amid many concerning ones. "Samuel," he said, using Sam's formal name rather than his Comanche designation, "you saved my people." "We saved them together," Sam corrected gently, "and we're not finished yet. You still have healing to do." Eagle Feather smiled faintly, unconvinced, my journey changing direction soon. I feel it. Before Sam could protest, he continued, "Listen now. Important words." Sam nodded, leaning closer to catch the chief's weakened voice. "Running Wolf ready to lead," Eagle Feather said. "Good heart, good mind, but young, needs wise counsel." His eyes held Sam's intently. "Stay one cycle of seasons. Help my son learn white man's ways while staying true to our people." It was not a request Sam had anticipated, not a permanent commitment to remain with the tribe, nor a release to return to white society, but a middle path. 1 year to help Running Wolf establish his leadership and navigate the complex relationships with settlers and the army. "I will," Sam promised, the decision feeling right as soon as he spoke it. 1 cycle of seasons. Eagle Feather nodded, satisfaction easing the lines of pain in his face. "After that, you choose again. Follow heart where it leads." He reached for the medallion around his neck, identical to the one Sam wore, but always brothers, always connected. The chief's strength was fading, but his mind remained sharp. He asked for Running Wolf, then for Captain Harrison. To his son, he gave instructions and blessings in Comanche, words too private and sacred for Sam to translate. To Harrison, he extracted promises regarding the safety and rights of the Shadow Wolf Band, ensuring that what had been negotiated would be honored regardless of his own fate. By midday, word had spread throughout the canyon that the chief was failing. Members of the tribe gathered outside the cave, some singing softly, others maintaining respectful silence. Inside, only family and closest advisors remained, along with Sam and Morning Star. As the sun reached its zenith, Eagle Feather asked to be taken outside, to feel the warmth on his face one last time. Running Wolf and Sam carefully carried him to a flat rock overlooking the canyon, where the chief could see his people and the lands that would remain their home. "Good place," Eagle Feather murmured, his gaze sweeping across the sandstone walls glowing red gold in the sunlight. "Strong place, safe place." He motioned for Running Wolf to come closer, removing the eagle feather that had given him his name, the symbol of his leadership and authority. With trembling hands, he placed it in his son's hair, the gesture requiring no words to convey its significance. Then, with Sam supporting him on one side and Running Wolf on the other, Eagle Feather raised his arms toward the sky in a final blessing for his people. His voice, suddenly stronger than it had been in days, carried across the canyon in the ancient language of his ancestors. The tribe responded as one, a sound that was part mourning, part affirmation, part promise. Even those who had never accepted Sam fully into their midst acknowledged him now as he stood beside their dying chief, the bone medallion visible against his shirt, his face reflecting the same grief that touched them all. When the final words had been spoken, they returned Eagle Feather to the cave, where he slipped into unconsciousness as the sun began its descent. He passed peacefully just before sunset, Running Wolf holding one hand and Sam the other, the two men who represented the dual aspects of his legacy. The mourning ceremonies lasted 3 days, conducted according to traditions that Sam observed with respect and participation where appropriate. As Eagle Feather's blood brother, he had specific roles to fulfill, guided patiently by Morning Star through the unfamiliar rituals. On the 4th day, with the chief laid to rest in a sacred cave high on the canyon wall, Running Wolf formally assumed leadership of the Shadow Wolf Band. His first act as chief was to affirm the agreement his father had made with Captain Harrison and the territorial governor. His second was to publicly acknowledge Sam's position within the tribe, not merely as his father's blood brother, but as a trusted advisor to the new chief and a healer to all the people, a bridge between two worlds that had too often met in conflict rather than cooperation. As Sam stood beside Running Wolf in the ceremonial circle, Captain Harrison watching with respectful interest from the side, he felt the weight of the commitment he had made to Eagle Feather. One cycle of seasons to help guide the transition and establish foundations for the future. After that, another choice would await him. But for now, his path was clear. The bone medallion around his neck was no longer simply a symbol of his bond with a man who had been both patient and friend, but a reminder of responsibilities that extended to an entire community. Whatever the future might hold beyond his promised year, Samuel Walker, Harvard-educated physician, Civil War surgeon, frontier doctor, and now healing hands of the Shadow Wolf Band, had found his purpose in the most unexpected of places. And as the ceremonial fire cast its dancing light across faces that had once been strange, but now were familiar, Sam realized that in saving one life in a wilderness ravine, he had not only found a brother, but a home, one that existed not in the white world or the Comanche world alone, but in the fragile, precious space between them where healing and understanding might grow. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.